is that socially, we were always geared, and I know a lot of feminists are not going to want to hear this, but that's okay. We were always geared to want to do something about women's issues. It's always been in men's mandate to help women. If we hear a woman scream at night, men will run to go help. It's always been that way throughout all of human history. Men take care of women, women take care of children. That's the way it's always been. And so when women started demanding, rightfully so, their share of employment, of education, of access to whatever this world has to offer for their own choices, their own dreams, many, many men stepped up and said, yeah, it's time, let's do this. They helped them because that was a part of our human biology, or our sociobiology, if you will. With men, the rules are completely reversed. Men are supposed to do for others, not for themselves. And so when men have started to speak up and say, wait a minute, I think we need to take a look at our own issues, the indignation just is almost instantaneous. And it comes from across the spectrum. You can find it in churches, you can find it in institutions of higher education, you find it in the halls of our government. Anywhere you go, could you imagine a politician standing up in this country right now saying, we need to look at men's rights? What's happening to them? His life expectancy as a public servant, or her life expectancy, would be about 5 minutes. However, you could take even, and it does happen, sometimes ridiculous notions of what we need to do about women's issues, and people will stand there and applaud. This is an imbalance that is deeply rooted in our culture. And the time for this has finally come for people to start speaking up about it and actually doing something about it.
Yeah, there's definitely a call to action. What do you think the steps are to improve the future for men?
The first step, I fully believe, is for men to get that they're never going to get permission from this culture to speak up on their own behalf. That's the first step, and to decide to do it anyway. That's really what A Voice for Men is about. It is, like I said, a defiant voice. This culture does not want to hear this stuff, and we easily shame men when they speak up. And I think people underestimate sometimes just how powerful an influence shame is in the lives of men, and just how easy men are to control with it. Let me give you an example. During World War I, the British government was having problems for some reason to getting men to volunteer to cross the channel and go into the meat grinder over there and face the mustard gas and artillery shells and life in the mud and the blood and the trenches. They just didn't want to go. A campaign was started where they used women to hand out white feathers to men, which was a symbol of disgrace and shame. And they went among the population and they handed out these feathers to any able-bodied young men that were not in uniform as a mark that they were cowards. And it worked. I would ask anybody to consider how much power that is. That simply the fear of being handed a white feather by a woman in public would cause young men to say, okay, I'll cross the channel and I'll go be cannon fodder.
Wow.
Look up White Feather Campaign, World War I. Whole history on it. It was Emmeline Pankhurst was the one that coordinated. She was one of the suffragettes. She and I forget the other two people. It was a man and a woman, some retired general or admiral, I believe, and a socialite decided that not enough young British men were investing in the royalties' wishes to go fight in World War I. So they came up with what they felt like would be the greatest influence, and they were absolutely right. Because what they noticed was that young men started enlisting not because they'd been handed a white feather, but because they were afraid they were going to. It was such a disgraceful mark to be called a coward as a man that literally tens of thousands of them died for it. That is, to me, an element, and it's one of the things that we do a lot, is we study the dynamics of what actual power is. A lot of people want to believe that, okay, you have a good job and you make a lot of money, so that means that you're more powerful, even though you take all that money and you take care of people with it, other people, and not necessarily yourself. You may work yourself into an early grave doing it, but it's still interpreted as power. And we look at women as though they're powerless in this society, and we don't think about the enormous power that women have always had with men. And it is absolutely staggering, the amount of power that women have with men in this culture. And we see that being played out right now in our universities with women's studies and gender study departments. I think it's particularly ironic, they're right now running white ribbon campaigns for men to pledge that they're not going to be violent to women, despite the fact that all the research says that there's gender symmetry in domestic violence, that men and women hit each other in relationships with roughly the same frequency. But yet we've got this model that it's only men doing it, and they have a white ribbon to hand out to men that is like straight out of the World War I textbook. I think it's ironic, and if it weren't so tragic, it would be funny.